Hey, welcome back, everyone. I want to talk about what's happening today with Fox and Tucker Carlson. You might have seen that Tucker Carlson is leaving Fox. We're not being given clear details on why he's leaving, whether he was forced out or fired, or whether it was an agreement. They're making it sound right now like it was some kind of mutual thing, but they're not giving us any details. So we'll see. That's Fox now. So that's Tucker Carlson, that's Dan Bongino, both leaving Fox, and also Don Lemon got pushed out of CNN, fired. And they announced they got fired. So, we'll see what happens with all this. Also, I want to give a brief update on Biden announcing his 2024 presidential run, what Trump is saying about it, what's happening with that. And also, I want to go into something pretty deep today, which, and of course, there's always big issues to talk about and stuff everyone's talking about in the news, but there's some really serious things that nobody talks about. One of the biggest things happening right now is that one of the main organizations that runs the internet, essentially, ICANN, and people say, well, they just handle domain names. No, under ICANN is IANA, which handles many of the rules fundamental to the control of the internet. They're under pressure right now from different international organizations and countries trying to force them to enact censorship protocols at the fundamental level of the internet. And I want to go into some of my past reporting on this. I've been reporting on this way back in 2014, 2016. I'll show you some of my articles explaining how the Obama administration relinquished U.S. federal government control of ICANN, thereby exposing it to foreign censorship. And if you're wondering how the internet can be censored, well, you can thank Obama for that, because the internet, because of Obama, is no longer protected by the U.S. Constitution as it was until Obama came into power and handed it off. I'll explain to you what happened with that, why the internet is the way it is, why it changed so drastically 2014, 2016, and what really happened. It's going to be an interesting story, so stick around. And of course, that ties into some of the pushes for global IDs, global digital ID, which I'll explain to you as well. There's some different groups pushing for it, and it's actually bipartisan. There are Republicans and Democrats pushing for global IDs. And folks, also, as a reminder, Crossroads is going prime time, 7 p.m. Eastern time, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. We're going to be on cable TV, actually, starting in a couple weeks. This will be the last week of the normal live show like you're watching right now, and I'm sorry. We'll figure something out in the future. But Crossroads is going to move to 7 p.m. Eastern time. We're still going to be on Epoch TV. You can still watch us. You can still chat in the live chat, of course, while it's premiering. And we'll also, of course, be on cable. So those of you who want to watch Crossroads on cable TV, we're on Fios just about everywhere, but you can also go to ntd.com/cabletv.htm to find which channel we're on in your local area. And it's a big step for us. And heck, interesting timing that Tucker's leaving Fox suddenly, because the new show is going to be very similar to his style, but of course with my take on things and my unique analysis. Interesting times we're in, folks. All right, that said, let's jump into the first stories. I want to talk about what's happening with Joe Biden announcing his run for president. And bear with me, I know, bear with me. Let me show you about Biden's official announcement on this. I'll show you what he's running on. Let's look at his campaign. I'll play the video, just a bit of it, and we'll jump into it further.
Freedom, personal freedom, is fundamental to who we are as Americans.
There's nothing more important, nothing more sacred.
That's been the work of my first term, to fight for our democracy.
This shouldn't be a red or blue issue.
To protect our rights, to make sure that everyone in this country is treated equally and that everyone is given a fair shot at making it. But around the country, MAGA extremists are lining up to take on those bedrock freedoms, cutting Social Security that you paid for your entire life while cutting taxes for the very wealthy, dictating what healthcare decisions women can make, banning books, and telling people who they can love, all while making it more difficult for you to be able to vote. When I ran for president 4 years ago, I said we're in a battle for the soul of America, and we still are. The question we're facing is whether in the years ahead we have more freedom or less freedom, more rights or fewer. I know what I want the answer to be, and I think you do too. This is not a time to be complacent. That's why I'm running for re-election.
All right, I won't play the whole thing. You can watch the rest if you would like. You get the idea, though. Basically, Biden's running on a platform of not being Trump. He's going against what he calls the MAGA Republicans. And he's framing his own narratives on their policies. He's saying they want to ban books. Of course, the context of that is Republicans want to ban books that solicit sexual imagery to children. Such as incest. I've looked at these books personally that they're banning just to see what they say. There are books, for example, showing incestual relationships between daughters and their fathers, between brothers and sisters. Those are among the books being banned. A lot of them are books teaching children about gender identity and telling them that they can be trans. Those are the books they're talking about banning. They're not talking about banning like normal books. On the note of taxes, of course, Biden's saying that they want to protect taxes of wealthy Americans. Biden's wrapped up in a huge IRS scandal right now tied to Hunter Biden, and they might have been dodging those taxes too. Although, innocent till proven guilty, we'll see what comes out in the end. But they're kind of in hot water with that, and many people have noted, as did Trump, and I'll show you in a second, that, the tax hikes the Biden administration has made are actually impacting normal middle-class Americans pretty heavily as well. Not saying high class or not normal Americans. Anyways, folks, let me show you Trump's response to it. Trump had an official statement as well, and Trump, in his style, is not holding any punches. Trump said this in an official statement. Trump said, quote, "You could take the 5 worst presidents in American history and put them together, and they would not have done the damage Joe Biden has done to our nation in just a few short years. Thanks to Joe Biden's socialist spending calamity, American families are being decimated by the worst inflation in half a century. Banks are failing, our currency is crashing, and the dollar will soon no longer be the world standard, which will be our greatest defeat in over 200 years. Real wages have been falling 24 months in a row. In other words, under Biden, workers have gotten a pay cut each and every month for 2 straight years. We have surrendered our energy independence just like we surrendered in Afghanistan, which we just had a short time ago. And the price of gasoline just hit a 5-month high, and it's going much higher than that. He notes the border crisis. He notes Ukraine, what he calls a disaster. He notes that China is pushing back against the United States and the Pax Americana on the world stage. He notes that Iran is just days away from developing a nuclear weapon. And he's noting all these things in context of Biden's lack of dealing with these things in a way that will actually stop them. And then Trump continues stating, on top of it all, Biden is the most corrupt president in American history. And that's not even close. Nobody can believe what's going on with, again, no retribution whatsoever. And so Trump is also heavily noting he's probably going to be campaigning, just like Biden's campaigning on his anti-MAGA thing. Trump's going to be heavily campaigning on his anti-Biden policy, noting Biden's failed policies and so on. And then Trump says at the end, close to the end, with your support in the election, we will defeat Joe Biden in 2024. We will rescue our economy. We will crush inflation. We will stop the invasion on our southern border. We will restore our nation's dignity, and we will prevent World War III from happening. Together, we will make America great again. Thank you. So Trump is also noting the more extreme possibilities, World War III, nuclear war, and so on, in his campaign. But there you go. That's going to be basically the lineup for 2024. It's just, this is the kickoff. It's really just starting now because Biden is now officially announced. You actually have some pretty big Democrat contenders. Well, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I think, being one of the big contenders against Biden. Notably, the Democrats are not going to have debates on who the Democrat nominee will be. In other words, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., although he is running for president on the Democrat platform, he's not going to be basically allowed to be the Democrat nominee, at least not currently. They're not going to debate it. The Democrats are not going to allow it. I know some people have issues with that, but you should note if it was the tables were turned to be the same way, because typically you do have the incumbent as the candidate, and that's just the way things are, whether it's Republicans or Democrats. Although people are noting that they're not allowing those debates to happen is actually not healthy for the democratic process. So you be the judge. I will say Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I watched some of his campaign videos. He's actually supporting more of a classical Democrat platform, which I found to be very interesting. It's anti-war, it's anti-big business, it's anti-big pharma. Really, it's, fighting for the little guy is the old narrative of the Democrat Party. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. actually does embody that. But that debate is not going to be allowed to happen, at least not on the Democrat platform. You are going to be watching it on the sidelines, and I think that's still healthy for the country, as long as people can see different ideas, and especially if Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and others can actually impact the Democrat voting base, who will then demand similar, more moderate or classical Democrat policies. On Trump's side, Mike Pence has announced he will not be running for president. And so Trump is not facing Pence. DeSantis has still not yet announced a presidential run. Ironically, folks, the whole Alvin Bragg fiasco in New York, where this rogue DA, this Soros-backed DA, decided to charge Trump, really just propelled Trump to the front row of the entire Republican, party, basically. And you had Mike Pence get forced to come out and support, well, not get forced, but he came out and supported Trump. DeSantis, to the detriment of him, actually, decided not to, and did so while even people who were very anti-Trump did do so. He came out later, of course, criticizing the charges against Trump and so on. But for many voters, that was too little too late. And then Trump went on the offense. It's unclear whether DeSantis is still going to run for president. We will see. Some people are noting, hey, just wait 4 years. And actually, he will have a real shot at it in 4 years, I think. But we'll see what happens. You do have other contenders against Trump. Vivek Ramaswamy going more on the anti-ESG, environmental social governance, and more on the culture war front on the business side. Larry Elder, who does a show with Epoch Times, the Larry Elder Show, he has announced he's going to run for president, and he's really campaigning on more pushing back against a lot of the race narratives and the racial divisions in the country. In reality, in terms of just votes, Trump is by far the forerunner, the front runner. So again, we'll see if anybody can put a dent in that. But again, as I've mentioned, the debate is important, in my opinion, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, because the debate is what forms the beliefs of the voting base. And the beliefs of the voting base, even if the individual running on a point of debate is not the nominee, the people who would support that individual do impact the policies of the person who is chosen to run. And so that it is a necessary part of how this country works, in my opinion, to have multiple people running, even if they can't win. But again, it's all starting now. We will be doing a lot of coverage on the elections. I'll be covering it quite a bit. And so, hey, tune in, folks, and we'll go over it all. Also, Biden has submitted, this was huge news yesterday. I'm going to do something more in depth on this tomorrow because, frankly, it's such a big deal that, really deserves a more fleshed out segment. But Biden actually submitted a war powers resolution yesterday. America is going to be sending troops to Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Sudan. Sudan, which now has what looks like the brewings of a civil war. And America could very easily, at this point, get pulled into a peacekeeping operation, aka the same type of war we've been pulled into over the last 70 years in Africa. And Biden's going to be sending troops specifically to Djibouti, which is in the northern tip of Africa. There's a choke point, a maritime trade choke point there, and also a major U.S. military base there. It's also where China has one of its quote-unquote string of pearls, Chinese military bases scattered throughout major maritime trade choke points throughout the world. And so this is going to be a big deal. We'll see how it evolves or whether it does. Biden is saying it's temporary, basically overseeing the evacuation of Americans from these regions. That being said, war does have a unifying, I think, element to it that, let's face it, politicians do like to use for their own interest. And if Biden can, really win some of the war hawks and get the patriotic Americans behind him, that is viewed as something that will win him some votes among the more conventional Republican voting base. Whether that will happen, I don't know. But I'll be detailing that more tomorrow. Also, Sudanese fighters have actually breached one of the virus laboratories in Sudan that contains polio, cholera, measles, and who knows what else. It's unclear whether they have broken any of the safety seals that would release these viruses, but a bunch of, really terrorist fighters breaking into a sensitive virus laboratory is a pretty dang big deal. Especially these types of folks who, might decide to drink the magic potion, so to speak. These little vials they find, but we'll see what happens with that. It's kind of up in the air right now. We're only getting minor details on it. Again, I'll go more into what's happening tomorrow on the potential and realities of possible war. And it's not just Africa. It's a lot of places right now. Things are really heating up to the possibility of war. World War III, as Trump noted. This is not just people being sensational. It's getting to the point now where it's a very real possibility. That said, folks, let's jump into what's happening with Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson, of course, the host of Tucker Carlson Tonight at Fox News, he's stepping down. Now, it's not clear what exactly is happening. Fox News and Tucker, they announced that they just came to an agreement and Tucker's going to leave. We don't know if he's fired. We don't know if he decided to leave, if he quit. They say it was an agreement. That's about all we're getting right now. This is also very quickly on the heels of Dan Bongino leaving Fox News. And with the two of them leaving, these are the two biggest shows at Fox. Also, Don Lemon was fired by CNN. And that doesn't surprise me one bit, because if you remember, CNN was saying when the new leadership came in that they were going to get rid of the old hosts. That meant Brian Stelter and all those guys. And sure enough, they've just been purging them like clockwork. CNN looks like it's trying to rebrand itself as more of a moderate news channel. They're trying to be less far left. And so we'll see what happens with them. Let me show you a bit of what's happening with Fox. This is about all we're getting right now from Fox. I have reached out for comment on some of my contacts. I have not heard anything suggesting that they don't want to talk about it. But Fox News did say this in a public release. They say, Fox News Media and Tucker Carlson have agreed to part ways. We thank him for his service to the network as a host and prior to that as a contributor. Now, people are noting, although we don't have clear answers on what happened, there is some suspicion that there might have been some government pressure. Other than circumstantial evidence, we cannot verify that. But there is some circumstantial evidence. One of the biggest ones being Ocasio-Cortez, Senator Cortez, right, one of the squad members on the Democrat side, who actually made a public call for government to go after Tucker Carlson and to restrict Fox News' ability to broadcast the news. And any conservative media, for that matter, although she didn't say conservative necessarily. Let me show you this video, folks. This is Representative Cortez talking about this. This is what she was saying just prior to all this.
Federal regulation in terms of what's allowed on air and what isn't. And when you look at what Tucker Carlson and some of these other folks on Fox do, it is very very clearly incitement of violence, very clearly incitement of violence. And that is the line that I think we have to be willing to contend with.
Anyways, she's calling for federal regulations that would restrict the ability of broadcast media to show certain news narratives on cable TV. And frankly, I find that concerning because, well, look, frankly, the people who claim that everything else is disinformation have a track record of being the main sources of disinformation. Let's face it, many of the official COVID narratives turned out to be fake. The Trump-Russia scandal turned out to be fake. The accusations coming out even now on, the Hunter Biden laptop, at least the efforts to cover it up and say it was Russian disinformation, turned out to be fake. And it turns out we were lied to through a weird collaboration between, at least on these, the Democrat Party, the intelligence community, actually administration officials within different government agencies, the news media, and big tech colluding with each other to lie to the American public. And this seems to be a track record. Watch my episode yesterday where I go in depth into that whole system. I find it concerning if people like this believe that journalists should not be able to question official narratives. Of course, questioning an official narrative does mean you put your head on the chopping block for a little bit and you hope nobody cuts it off. I find myself in that position frequently, where, you question the official narrative and you put your cards on the table and you said, I'm betting I have it right and I'm betting you have it wrong. And folks, frankly, people like myself have gotten it right a lot more than we've gotten it wrong when it comes to challenging these official government narratives and working with this whole system. So I do find it concerning if they believe that they have the legal necessity or political necessity to ensure that those types of narratives cannot be challenged. Especially with myself going on cable very soon. I kind of feel like I'm next in line for the shooting gallery or something like that. It's an interesting position to be in. Crossroads is going prime time now, and the timing is interesting with all of this, frankly. But maybe it's all meant to be, folks. That said, let's go a bit deeper into this. Back on Tucker Carlson, again, he has not given an official statement of why he's leaving Fox or whether he was fired or whether he quit or anything like that. But there was a video posted by Dan Bongino, who's also leaving Fox, of Tucker Carlson giving a speech and expressing some of his real, I think, fundamental political views on what we're watching right now as a society. And I found this very telling in terms of where Tucker Carlson stands politically. And maybe even how he's kind of butting heads a bit with the establishment at Fox News as well. Let me show you this. I'll play a bit of what Tucker was saying because, again, I find it very interesting. And I think that, maybe like myself, he's he's a bit of a rabble-rouser, let's say, not necessarily pleasing the establishment of either side. But let me show you his video on what Tucker was saying before he left.
None of this makes sense in conventional political terms. When people or crowds of people, or the largest crowd of people at all, which is the federal government, the largest human organization in human history, decide that the goal is to destroy things, destruction for its own sake. Hey, let's tear it down. What you're watching is not a political movement, it's evil. So if you want to assess, and I'll put it in I'll stop with this. I'll put it in non-political, or non-specific theological terms, and just say, if you want to know what's evil and what's good, what are the characteristics of those? And by the way, I think the Athenians would have agreed with this. This is not necessarily just a Christian notion. This is kind of I would say, widely agreed upon understanding of good and evil. What are its products? What do these two conditions produce? Well, good is characterized by order, calmness, tranquility, peace, whatever you want to call it, lack of conflict, cleanliness. Cleanliness is next to godliness. It's true. It is. And evil is characterized by their opposites: violence, hate, disorder, division, disorganization, and filth. So if you are all in on the things that produce the latter basket of outcomes, what you're really advocating for is evil. That's just true. I'm not calling for a religious war, far from it. I'm merely calling for an acknowledgement of what we're watching, which is not what, and I'm certainly not backing the Republican Party. I mean, ugh. I'm not making a partisan point at all. I'm just noting what's super obvious. Like, those of us who are in our mid-50s.
Anyways, it's interesting because he's not really standing beside either political party. He's making what is a nonpartisan argument that the debates we're having in society are really a spiritual debate, which those of you who watch Crossroads for a while, you know that I've said the same thing. We're not having a political debate. We're having moral debates. And as Tucker Carlson notes, like the old argument around abortion, a woman's body, her choice, and do you believe a woman who was raped should be able to abort the child, or incest? Well, it's a very minor number compared to the number of abortions that would be among that. Personally, I believe life is life, and you shouldn't kill a life. That's my moral stance. But Tucker's noting that it's actually gone to an extreme. There are now people saying, hey, there's taxes are too high, get an abortion. They're saying, hey, global warming is a threat, get an abortion. And he's noting that that's not like normal politics. If you're telling people the solution to a political issue is to kill a baby, that's not normal politics. And that's not like my body, my choice. I would argue a lot of women who are forced to have an abortion because of economic issues are not doing it because they don't want to be mothers. They're doing it because the political pressure and the difficulty of getting by has become so great that they feel they need to kill their babies like hamsters in order to sustain their lives. And it's that type of thing that government normally is constituted to resolve, not forcing you to do desperate things like kill your children in order to get by. Right? The nature of, if they're pushing people into such extreme circumstances, the solution shouldn't be kill. The solution should be look at how to relieve suffering or alleviate pressure, neither of which they're doing. And he goes in other things as well, the trans movement and so on, and how it's targeting children. And many people say, hey, if you're a grown adult and you want to castrate yourself, hey, be my guest. Hey, if you want to do that, all power to you. I'm not going to do it. I don't want you, pushing other people to do it. But if you think that's the best thing for your own health, hey, well, all power to you, folks. But, it's different when you start telling kids they should do it. And it's different when you use false information to try to sell a false narrative to kids on the type of joy it will bring them, when the opposite is often true. Or when you're telling parents that by not doing it, you're going to push your kid towards suicide, when the opposite is also true again. Actually, their suicide rates will increase. And so it's not something that will bring people happiness. If you're weaponizing, in a way, people's happiness or lack thereof against them, and using false narratives to try to make them do very extreme things that will change the trajectory of their entire lives, I don't think you can call that a political issue. That's good and evil. We're debating morals. Again, as I've said before, we're having moral debates disguised as political debates. And it's important to understand what we are actually doing. We are having moral debates. Now, back to the point, I don't know if that's why Tucker was fired. He's criticizing both sides of the political spectrum. He's also criticizing, of course, in that the Republican establishment. And Tucker, in a way, has, while Fox has become more anti-Trump and anti-MAGA to an extent, that's kind of the way they've gone. Tucker was one of the few kind of holdouts where he has still at least given fair voice to Trump. Although you could argue in some of his private conversations, he has expressed what appears to be a dislike for Trump, although who knows how accurate that is, because I only partially trust anything we see in terms of public narrative. But on another point, back to what's happening right now with the news media. CNN is also pushing some folks out. They've pushed out many people so far. They pushed out, of course, Brian Stelter. They pushed out, of course, other folks. And they've now fired Don Lemon. Let me show you this. This is Don Lemon on Twitter, and he said, "I was informed this morning by my agent that I have been terminated from CNN. I am stunned. After 17 years at CNN, I would have thought someone in management would have had the decency to tell me directly." And CNN actually pushed back against Don Lemon and are saying that Don Lemon is not being totally honest in the characterization of what happened. And they say in a tweet, they refuted Lemon's account as inaccurate, and they said this, quote, "Don Lemon's statement about this morning's events is inaccurate. He was offered an opportunity to meet with management, but instead released a statement on Twitter." So he's fired one way or the other, but they're refuting the point where Don Lemon says that they didn't want to meet with him or whatever like that. They're saying they offered to meet with him and he didn't want to. Who knows who's telling the truth here, but that's what they're saying. That being said, CNN is again trying to reposition itself politically to an extent. They're trying to become more moderate. And so, we'll see how that happens. They're doing a huge rebranding, essentially. We'll see where things go. Between CNN and Fox News, these are two of the main establishment media, and we'll see what happens. That being said, Crossroads is going prime time. I'm still going to be with Epoch Times, but I'm going to be broadcasting through our sister media, NTD Television. And NTD Television is also starting a 12 hours a day cable TV news broadcast. That's going to be 7 to 7. So if you don't want to watch these other channels, tune in to NTD and watch Crossroads at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, prime time, because we're throwing our cards in the game, folks. All right, that said, I want to go into something that somebody asking what channel it is. It's going to be different state by state. The channel it's on. We're going to be on FiOS, which I don't know if it's the same in every state. But if you want to find the local channel for Crossroads and NTD's 12-hour a day news broadcast, you can go to ntd.com/cabletv.htm. Again, you can see the link and it's right here, right? Or here specifically. ntd.com/cabletv.htm. And again, we'll have stuff posted. It will still be on Epoch TV. We will still. You're mentioning Ziffy Cat's noting NTD as a Roku app. They're on Roku. That's accurate. We'll still be on Epoch TV. You can still join the live chat at 7 p.m. once we go live, and everything's still going to be working as normal. For the next couple weeks, I'll just be doing a monologue as I transition to do the full show, which will launch the 15th of next month. And so, big news, big time stuff happening, and interesting shifts in the cable TV sphere right as we're about to launch our big cable TV debut. So, interesting timing, right? Heaven wills it. It is the will of heaven. Those of you who remember, I was talking about that movie Kingdom of Heaven a few months ago, right? All right. Anyways, folks, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. Always you have two different things happening. There's the stuff most of the media is focused on. There's the stuff the public attention is fixated on. And then, in my opinion, there are actually a lot of bigger stories taking place that get very little or no attention whatsoever. And I want to talk about one of the biggest stories happening right now, at least in my opinion, which is that ICANN, and I'll explain what that is because everyone should know what ICANN is. It's really important. Specifically under it is IANA, which runs some of the rules that govern the internet. And ICANN used to be under the U.S. government, meaning it used to be protected by the U.S. Constitution. Barack Obama changed that. he relinquished U.S. control of ICANN, and by doing so, exposed ICANN to the wills of the international community and the censorship desires of the international community. I was one of the canaries in the coal mine warning people that this is a terrible idea, and it puts at risk the entire integrity of free speech online, especially at a time when the internet has become the town square. What I warned about is now coming to pass, and took 7 years or so. But I want to show you what's happening right now. We'll jump over to Epoch TV for the rest of the episode. Again, we still have an hour left, so stick around. And folks, let me show you a quick trailer before we jump over, and I will see you on Epoch TV exclusively.
The homeless problem is getting worse, it's not getting better. Crime is getting worse, it's not getting better. Regulations are getting worse, it's not getting better.
People are bailing on California in record numbers.
Showing more than half of Californians are considering moving.
It might be harder to find a U-Haul than to find your next home.
The exodus of people moving out of California is not new.
No sane person would want to leave California if they could make it here.
For the first time ever, people are leaving.
In 2020, California lost 650,000 people.
First time in my lifetime I've heard that.
I'm leaving California.
Why you should consider moving to have.
We're gonna miss you guys.
Several high-profile companies like Tesla have moved their headquarters.
I'm out of here. This place is gonna sink. Watch, they already have high taxes.
This is just the tip of the iceberg.
California treats businesses like criminals and taxpayers like organ donors, and people get tired of it.
Here's some of our costs.
Drivers are paying at $7.39 a gallon.
$3 million. This is like a normal house.
Our problems are man-made. All you have to do is pay attention.
Here is what I found.
I can't be the only person who's seeing this.
The California legislature can't go on forever like this. This is a form of self-destruction.
When I came here 22 years ago, it was a different California.
Where is the state headed?
California will deteriorate.
Where'd the money go?
This is because of stupid policies. There's no other word for it.
The politicians are making money off our problems.
People were tricked.
They're being lied to, and their way of life is being destroyed.
There's a lot of people that you would be surprised by their stories.
My entire family is leaving.
We left all of our friends behind.
Hey, live a day or two in our shoes.
We're going to lose the very core values that built this state.
California's bad ideas go national really fast. And if California fails, the United States failed.
It's a new Epoch Times documentary exclusively on Epoch TV called Leaving California. My friend CMAC, my colleague CMAC, he did that. It's really good. I can tell you as a former Californian, born and raised, I left California. I miss it's my home. I miss it. I'm from San Diego originally. It's sad to see what's become of the state. Really is. But it's something that tells you a lot about where the country is going. What starts in California culturally tends to become a pattern throughout the country, just the way things work. And California has a lot of influence like that. The documentary, in my opinion, is very well done, and I cannot recommend it enough. I really hope all of you can watch it. If you're an Epoch TV subscriber, you can watch it for free. It is on Epoch TV. And if you're not an Epoch TV subscriber, then get one. Just try it out. And by doing so, you'll also support Epoch Times and my channel as well. So that said, folks, thank you for your support. Let's jump over to Epoch TV exclusively, and I'll see you there. And folks, let's talk about ICANN.